everyone, and welcome to my first video. My name is Sharon Dower and I come from Swansea in South Wales, and I work from a small unit in Binia, which is just between Swansea and Llanelli. We're on the very pretty Lough estuary, and this is where I hold the flower school, floristry and flower arranging classes, and I also work mainly as an events and wedding florist. And I travel throughout the UK as a national teacher for NAFES and an area demonstrator, where I give clubs, private establishments lessons in learning how to arrange flowers. So today I thought it would be nice. It's quite dry, the sun is shining. I had a little look around the vicinity of where I am to see what pieces of materials I could forage to coordinate and complement some flowers that I've picked up at the supermarket. So it's nothing too expensive, no flowers that would be difficult to get hold of. These are just a very pretty tulip. We've got two slightly different size heads, one a little bit bigger than the other, one orange with that bi-coloured streak through the middle, and then that lovely vibrant yellow. And we've also got one of the prettiest sort of flowers that is around this time of the year. This is the narcissus. This is probably a variety called paper white, and it has that wonderful sweet aroma that we expect to have from the narcissus family of flowers. And then I've foraged some from my garden and some from the area around. I've got a very pretty little white flower, which is the Skimmia japonica, which some of you might have grown in your garden. I've also got a little bit of the rosemary, the scented herb that we use quite a lot in cooking, which is fantastic for flower arranging as well. And that has a nice little bit of movement to drape down over the side. I've also foraged in my garden this time for some forsythia, so the spring flowering, very vibrant colour forsythia. And then locally to where I am now, I've found, look at these, aren't they amazing? So this is the alder catkin, a few little berries on there as well. And I think we also have some no we don't. I was going to say we have some pussy willow as well, but that's for another time. So aren't they amazing? And they will just cascade beautifully down over my container. Now you might see from the video that I've got a structure prepared, and that's just sitting on the top of my ceramic container. I'll talk you through that in just a minute. This is just an ordinary ceramic container, waterproof, and I filled it about 1/2 to 3/4 full of fresh, clean water with flower food added to aid and benefit the development of the fresh flowers. I haven't used any type of floral foam, mainly because the spring flowers like the daffodils and the tulips don't particularly enjoy being put into floral foam, and they don't last very well. So I've just used nice, fresh, clean water. And what I'm going to do with this sort of grid affair that I've created, I'm just going to place it so it sits on top of my container. It can work a few different ways, and that's going to work as a framework to support and hold my flowers into place. This is, I think it's a type of willow, but there is a few trees down in the vicinity of where I am, and this has been cut off and sort of put onto the side of the road, so I salvaged it this morning, and I've just laid a few pieces on top of one another and secured it with some florist wire to give me a little bit of a grid system, which will sit quite nicely on top. You could secure it with a little bit of tape to make it more secure, but I'm going to leave it quite naturally sitting over the top. And then that is going to support my materials, my fresh flower materials that I'm going to put in, and act as a little bit like chicken wire would have done before floral foam was invented. So we're going to start with no particular order, but I'm going to put a framework in of foliage first, a framework that will support my little soft narcissi and daffodils. And initially when you start, you might find that the materials might flop forward a little bit, but as we build up a frame, then they will all knit nicely into one another, and be quite firm within inside the foam. Within inside the water. Now what we've obviously got to remember is that the stems are long enough to go into the water that's in the container, and that we've removed any of the foliage off that would be below the water line. So keep that nice and clean so the water stays fresh and doesn't get filled with bacteria and goes off and ends up very smelly and very unattractive looking. Now I've just grouped a little bit of the Skimmia japonica sort of towards the front because I quite like that little white flower to be shown. And at the moment, just sort of to face it towards the camera, I'm going to do this front facing so that you can enjoy it without me turning the turntable around and around. And then again, I've got some small little bits of rosemary. These contrast beautifully in the texture and the shape alongside the very big round leaf of the Skimmia. Nice clean cut on the bottom to make sure that it will absorb the water. And again, I'm just going to place them in no real sort of set pattern. This is a very natural design. We're not following any very formal floristry or flower arranging rules. I'm not considering having 3s and 5s of flowers. I'm just making something quite simple that people could follow at home and maybe copy and be able to create for themselves at home. Now I've also got, this has come from the garden, I forgot to discuss this a little bit earlier. This is one of the Euonymus family, probably Golden Queen. You can see that it's reverting a little bit back to its natural type. So if this was in the garden, you'd need to remove off the green shoots to prevent it reverting back to its natural state. Just going to trim the new growth off just slightly because it's a little bit softer. And this will give us a lovely flash of yellow to pick up on the colourings that's in those lovely tulips. And if I just spin that round quickly, you can see that I'm bringing material through to the back as well, so that we have depth, so that your eye can travel through all the way back towards the back, gives you depth and prevents the design looking very, very heavy and as if it's going to tip over at the front. We've pretty much covered all of the framework that I created, which was intentional, but there is obviously the possibility of adding more of the framework willow on the top to carry the colour through on the top. But we've still got the lengths, there's lovely long lengths on the side, which complement that container beautifully. Now what I'm going to do is to start putting in the lovely little daffodils. Now lots of people will tell you that you shouldn't mix daffodils with other flowers, and that is correct. They tend to give off a very sappy sort of liquid on the bottom, and that does clog up the stems of other flowers. It helps if you condition the daffodils for 24 hours before mixing them with other flowers, and then if you don't cut the stems, now I am cutting the stems, but if you don't cut the stems, then you don't get any of that sap entering the water. So if you do want to mix them together, remember to keep them separate in a separate container and don't recut them the following day when you're adding them in with other flowers, and that will help everything stay nice and fresh. So I'm trying to ensure that the stem ends are going into the water while continuing to follow the sort of elongated design of the container. Now tulips, you probably all know, they like to grow towards the light and bend and move. I quite like that in a tulip because I quite like their own personality showing through. Apparently if you put a copper coin in the water, it prevents this from happening. Never tried it myself. It's worth a little experiment. And again, make sure that any loose foliage is removed from that tulip, and when you insert it into the water, it won't contaminate and spoil that water source at the bottom. Now I've also used floral foam. Sorry, not floral foam. I've got an obsession with floral foam at the moment. I've used flower food, is what I was going to say. So flower food into the water, that will help keep the water nice and clean. There is a sugar solution in the flower food that will encourage your flowers to open. And there's a bacterial side in there to keep the water nice and clean. Now I'm just going to bring a little bit of the colour of the yellow back slightly to create some depth, so that we don't end up with a design that's very front heavy. Now I'm obviously working backwards on this because it's facing the camera, but I wanted it quite natural, no set patterns, no set rules, and then that gives us a fairly good even display of the 3 different coloured flowers that we've got within the arrangement. Just clear that away, and then we can introduce that wonderful large berry, and sorry, it's not a berry, is it? That little catkins there and some of the cones. That's quite a thick branch, so I'm going to leave that to one side for just a second. See if we've got some more thinner branches that have that lovely curve. This is a particularly nice one, and that can sit wonderfully over the top, still ensuring that it's going fully into the water, but it gives us softness. This is what we also call recession, so we now have flower materials on different heights. Bring that one through to the centre, and I'm just not trying to formally arrange, as I've said a few times, just look at the material, see which way it bends, see which way it's shaped, and use it to its best ability. So this one we're going to drape forward to the front, so there's lovely little tassels can cascade over the front of my container. Now my container is a sort of grey-blue colour, and I was hoping to have been able to get hold of maybe some blue hyacinths to go into the design, but they weren't very open, so I've left them for another time when we get them a little bit more open. I'm just going to shimmy a few things around. Pinch a narcissite from the back, just because we've got a little bit of a gap there that needs some colour. And I'll spin that background for you to see. So very natural, no floral foam, so a little bit better for the environment. And I've just dropped my forsythia, so we'll just pick that up and add this wonderful spring shrub into the design as well. Nice small little flower to contrast nicely against those very big tulips. Now the forsythia, if you have it in the garden, it's a flower that develops before the leaf, so you always have these bare branches with the lovely little almost bell-like yellow flowers on the end. And then before the foliage, now I'm not an expert in gardening, so somebody might correct me in this, but before the foliage arrives on the plant, before it all buds with lovely green foliage, you need to cut it back so that by next year you will still have the wonderful yellow flowers opening before the leaves arrive. If you leave it too late, then you will remove next year's bud and you won't get any lovely yellow flowers on it. I always find this quite fascinating, how the yellow flower comes first and then the leaf a few weeks later. So they're loud and proud and they're not hidden by any foliage. And what that grid has done is it's supported the various different flower types. I can't really change their natural pattern and their natural shape. If they want to lean forward, they will lean forward and sit quite nicely in that framework. It's not like when you're arranging in floral foam and you can create an outline shape. We're just working with the flowers as they are naturally growing. So we'll just clear that off, spin it round so you can see it has depth as well, so there's movement towards the back, making your eye travel through. We'll spin that round so you can see how that's come together. So something easily done, supermarket flowers, some forage materials from the garden, and I'm hoping you're going to enjoy it. Thank you very much. See you all very soon.